In Nuzlocke, you can only catch the first Pokemon you encounter on a route. This leads you to hoping you'll get that Dratini or that Ralts, and usually failing and getting something like Rattata. But by chance, you will most likely get at least a few good Pokemon. But what if that wasn't the case? What if your encounter was always that Rattata level trash? Well, that's the challenge of this video. There's a ROM hack called Pokemon Emerald Trashlocke, which modifies the encounters in the game to be all sucky Pokemon. So, can I beat Pokemon Emerald with only trash? In-depth rules are in the description. After being jostled around in the back of the moving truck, we can go up to Route 101 and choose our starter. They have been changed to Goldeen, Slugma, and Sunkern. What a great start. Goldeen doesn't learn any water moves by level up. Slugma evolves at level 38, and Sunkern is Sunkern. I chose Slugma because he's my favorite of the three. He starts with Smog, which is only 20 base power, but also Yawn, which is good. North of Oldale Town, I almost beat the rival, but he gets a lucky crit, which is annoying. Luckily we don't have Pokeballs yet, which means the Nuzlocke hasn't started, so I grind up a bit and beat him the next time. Once we get Pokeballs, I step into the grass and get our first encounter, Wurmple. Wonder if it'll become Beautifly or Dustox, or if it'll get killed first. To the north, I get Poochyena, and on Route 102, we find Lotad. Not too bad at all. It only gets Absorb as a stab move by level up, but that's good enough for the first gym. On Route 104, we find a Hoppip. At this point, it has no attacking moves, so it will have to be switch trained before it can do anything. In the forest, we find Weedle. North of Rustboro, we find a Known, which is pretty icky, but it just so happens to have a water-type hidden power, so it will be helpful against the first gym. In Rusturf Tunnel, I catch an Igglybuff. Before fighting Roxanne, I'm gonna grind everyone up to level 14. Route 104 is a good place to grind, because Hoppip appears a lot and it can't attack you. Challenging Roxanne, I lead with a Known and one-shot both her Geodude. When Nosepass comes out, I switch to our newly evolved Lumbre. It's a pain to take down because Absorb doesn't do all that much, and it has an Oran Berry and potions to help soak up hits. But she foolishly kept going for Harden despite me using a special move, which allowed us to win the fight. After Roxanne, there's an optional rival battle to do. He leads with his own Slugma, and I beat it with Unknown. This fight is much harder if you play as a boy because May will have Torkoal instead of Slugma, which is a monster at this point in the game. His Mudkip is easily downed by Lombre. On Dewford Island, we get access to the Old Rod, which has been changed to only catch Love Disc in this game. Well, it's better than Unknown, I guess. In Granite Cave, we find Dunsparce. He's a funny little guy. I put him in the party instead of Hoppip. I repelled my way through the darkness and delivered the package to Steven so we can go to Sleeport City. We can go to the north of there and get another encounter, which is Meowth. I decide Persian will be better than Dunsparce, so I switch them out. After exhausting all the available trainer battles, I head back to the cave and grind everyone up to level 18, and Poochyena evolves. At this point, I feel ready to take on Brawly, so I go back to his gym and lead with Lombre. He led with Machop. I bulk upped and did some pretty big damage, so I switched into Dustox to tank his Karate Chop. I finished it off with Confusion and he brought in Meditite. It was easy because it always just tries to Focus Punch you. It ate a Super Potion, which is nice, and he brought out Makuhita. It couldn't do much to Dustox, and I took it down with a few Confusions. The next battle I was really scared of was the rival fight north of Slateport. This can be a run-ender. I led with Love Disc, expecting him to go for Slugma again, but this time he has his own Lumbre. Stop copying my team! I switched to Dustox and gusted it down. His Slugma then comes out next, which I easily dispatch with Love Disc. His last Pokemon is Marshtop, which is really powerful, but it can't do much to Lumbre. It tries to go for Bide, so I just waste a few turns with Fake Out and finish him off with Absorb. That went pretty smoothly. Arriving in Mauville City, we see that there's an NPC blocking access to the game corner. That's a neat way of restricting access to the good elemental TMs. I destroyed Wally's Ralts with one bite from Mightyena, and went west to see that the daycare center is blocked too for some reason. On that route, I catch a Beautifly. I beat all the trainers around the city and leveled everyone up to 24 to challenge Watson. He led with Voltorb and I led with Meowth. I took him down to red with 2 cuts, but he did a lot with his own attack, so I switched to Dustox. He healed and did a crit self-destruct taking out Dustox, our first death of the run. I brought in Lumbre, and he brought in Electrike. I faked him out and crit swifted him with Nature Power, paying him back for his. He brought out his Magneton next, which Slugma beat with 2 Embers. His last Pokemon is Manectric, and I bring in my own dog Pokemon. Intimidate lowers Manectric's attack, but Mightyena gets static paralyzed. He started to use Howl, so I went for Sand Attack to lower his accuracy. He countered with the 100% accurate Shockwave, but also kept using Howl for some reason. After dueling Super Potions, he gets a crit with Shockwave and takes us down to red. I had to heal up a couple more times due to being fully paralyzed, but eventually took him down with Bite. Beautifly in my party and leveled everyone up to 25. On Route 112, I found a Ponyta as an encounter. That should be a suitable replacement for Slugma if he dies. In Fiery Path, I found a Machop. You might think that's pretty good, but there's no way to evolve him into Machamp in this game. On Route 113, our encounter is Swinub. West of Fall Arbor Town, my encounter is Illumise, but I crit it knocking it out. That sucks. Illumise isn't really that terrible. I used it in a normal Emerald Nuzlocke once. In Meteor Falls, I caught a Sableye. Now we have to deal with Maxie atop Mount Chimney. We both led with Mightyena, but mine is a superior level, and I knock his out with Strength. His next Pokemon is Zubat, which I attracted with Love Disc. After healing up, I got him immobilized multiple times and took him down. His last Pokemon is Camerupt, and all Love Disc has to do is survive a Magnitude to knock him out. In Jagged Pass, I use all my Pokeballs trying to catch a Cast Form and fail. That's sucky. I leveled everyone up to 29 and evolved Meowth and took on Flannery. She led with Numel, and I led with Lumbre. I took it out with Fake Out and Strength, and she brought in Slugma, me switching to Persian. Cut almost one-shot it. Shows you how crap Slugma is. Persian dodged an Overheat, and I took it down with Payday. She then brought in Camerupt, which went down to 1 Water Gun from Love Disc. Now for her strongest Pokemon, Torkoal. Water Gun does less than a third, and she sets up Sunny Day, making it do even less. She paralyzes us with Body Slam, and I heal up to full. Torkoal then blasts us with a powered-up Overheat, which doesn't lower her stats because of a White Herb. This is a really tough gym battle. I heal up again, and take another Overheat, and now her special attack is actually lowered. I got it down to red, and had to do it all over again because she Hyper Potioned. After I beat her, we unlock the desert area in Mirage Tower, where I catch Kabuto and Sandshrew. I switched out Love Disc for Sandshrew and evolved him into Sandslash, and leveled up the rest of the team to 31 for Norman's gym. Sandslash got taken down to 1 HP by a crit slash from a trainer's Vigoroth. Norman leads with Spinda, and I lead with Persian. I get him to red, and Spinda uses Teeter Dance, confusing Persian. I switch to Beautifly and use Attract after he potions up. Then I use Stun Spore so he doesn't get a hit off while I gust him down, which actually does decent damage. His next Pokemon out is Vigoroth, so I switch to Sandslash. I take him out with a few slashes, and now he's bringing out Linoone. I bring Beautifly back in. I use the same Parafatuation technique, and Gust and Mega Drain him down. His last Pokemon is Slacking, and I go for Mightyena to lower his attack with Intimidate. I use 6 Sand Attacks, and he starts using Feint Attack, which doesn't do that much. He has Counter, so I just use a bunch of bites on him to take him out. Now we get the Surf HM, which is a great upgrade for Lombre. Now that we have Surf, a lot of encounters have opened up, so I go catch a bunch of them. I got Masquerain, Marill, no Thick Fat so it's garbage, Remoraid, Quillfish, Wingull, and Wailmer. I also go to New Mauville and get a static Voltorb encounter. My normal encounter is Porygon, and I knock it out with Bite, which I was really sad about. I like Porygon a lot. On the route north of Rustboro City, I catch a Tangela, which is pretty neat. On the route east of Mauville, I get a Krabby. Route 119, I get Seviper. I wipe out Team Aqua from the Weather Institute, and get an Unknown as a reward. Great. After destroying May and going past Fortree City, Steven gives us the Devon Scope. The invisible Kecleons were also changed to Unknown for some reason. It's weird because they let you find Kecleon in the grass on this route. I don't get the reasoning. I catch a Minun in the grass and a Stantler on the route with the Safari Zone. I also finally evolved Slugma into Macargo. Speaking of the Safari Zone, I catch a Manectric there. On Mount Pyre, I catch a Mawile. There are 2 trainers with Wobbuffet inside the mountain, which are really scary. I hate Destiny Bond. Luckily no one gets killed by them. To the south, I catch Blossom. That's a good find. Not as good as Vileplume, but still decent. Now it's time to finally go back to Winona. Turns out my Pokemon are overleveled because of all the trainers that were available to fight. She leads with Swablu, which is a gimme. Next up is Tropius, which I blast with Magcargo's Flamethrower. Third up is Pelipper, which is annoying with Supersonic and Protect, and also a Hyper Potion. I take it down with Mightyena. Skarmory is also destroyed with Flamethrower, and her last Pokemon is Altaria. This Altaria can be scary because it has Dragon Dance and an illegal Earthquake. I lower its attack with Mightyena's Intimidate. She set up 2 Dragon Dances and Earthquake didn't do that much. In Lily Cove City, we have our final battle with Brendan, and it's about as easy as the last one. In the department store, I bought Thunder to give to Persian. Now we have to go to the Magma Hideout, where I catch Chimecho. We battle Maxie again, and he leads with Mightyena, and I led with Persian. I used Thunder, and he swaggered, but I broke through and cut him to finish him off. Maxie next brought out Crobat, which did some good damage, so I switched into Magcargo, who flamethrowered, but I had to switch again into Mightyena. He also switched his Crobat out for Camerupt, who did a good bit of damage with Earthquake. I switched to Lombre and melted him with Surf. With Crobat coming back out, I switched to Sandslash and finish him off. Now we have to clear out the Aqua Hideout, which is easy. That unlocks a ton of water routes where I catch a bunch of Pokemon. I caught them out of order too, so I really don't want to go and name all of them. I'll bring them up if they're important. In Shoal Cave, I catch a Sneasel. After beating most of the trainers, I figured I was ready for the next gym. My Pokemon were level 42 to 46, and Tate and Liza's aces are 42. They led with Claydol and Xatu, and I with Mightyena and Persian. Mightyena's Intimidate was good for suppressing Claydol's Earthquake. I thought Thunder would take out Xatu in one hit, but I was wrong. I bit Claydol and it did decent damage. Xatu started to set up with Calm Mind, and Claydol E-Quaked. They hypered Xatu, and I thundered and bit it down. Claydol quaked again, so I swapped Persian out for Sandslash. I knocked out Claydol, leaving only their aces. Solrock put up a sunny day, and I Hyper Potioned Mightyena. I know this Solrock has Solar Beam, so I switched Sandslash out for Lombre. I bit Lunatone and Surfed, which didn't do much damage. They focus attacked Lombre and knocked it out. Sad. I then did this switcheroo thing with Magcargo and Sandslash to try to bait her into not hitting me with super effective moves. I tried to yawn with Magcargo, but he got annihilated by Solar Beam and Psychic. It always sucks to lose a starter. I brought out Sandslash and finally took down Lunatone with Bite. I flinched Solrock and finally took it down, ending a grueling fight. I replaced our fallen party members with Chimecho and Huntail, which I caught earlier. I leveled everyone up to 44 and went with Steven to liberate the Space Center, which was occupied by Team Magma. Maxie and Tabitha double battled us, and we could only choose 3 Pokemon. I chose Huntail, Mightyena, and Persian. They sent out Camerupt and Mightyena, and Steven used Metang. I did some surfing and took both of them out. Next up were Crobat and Golbat. I knocked out the latter and switched to Mightyena. Metang finally did something and knocked out Crobat. Steven's AI is pretty bad here. Last out are Mightyena and Camerupt. I beat Mightyena and Camerupt Earthquakes and knocked out Metang. Steven sent out Aggron and I Hyper Potioned Mightyena. I knocked out Camerupt with Strength and finished the battle. Now that that's done, we can dive. For my underwater encounter, I get Lileep. In the seafloor cavern, I caught a Loudred. Now we have to fight Archie. We both lead with Mightyena. He swaggered me, but I broke out of confusion and knocked him out. Crobat is out next, and I stayed in because of my attack boost. He confused me, so it was like I was swaggered again, and I switched into Sandslash. He also got confused, so I brought in Huntail and finished it with Surf. Last up is Sharpedo, which I blast with a Thunder from Persian. Now it's to the Cave of Origin, where I catch Shuppet, and Skypillar, where my Claydol explodes on me. Now I should have done some grinding for Juan, but I forgot to. He leads with Love Disc, and I sent out Persian. It goes down easily to Thunder. He then brings out Whiscash, which I Giga Drain with Beautifly. Next up is Celio, and I switch back to Persian and Thunder it. I don't knock it out, and I switch to Huntail. He Hyper Potions and paralyzes with Body Slam, so I switch to Chimecho and finish it with Confusion. His 4th Pokemon is Crawdon, so I switch back into Beautifly. I almost take it down with Giga Drain, but he retaliates with a crit Crab Hammer, knocking Beautifly out. I then finish it off with Mightyana's strength. This last Pokemon is Kingdra, and it tries to go for Double Team, but I get lucky and don't miss any crunches, defeating Juan. I replace Beautifly with Lileep and get everyone to level 46. Now we can go to Victory Road, where I catch Delcatty. We also get challenged by Wally. I lead with Huntail and him with Altaria, but he switched to Magneton. I switched to Sandslash and had to heal a freeze he got from another battle. He tried to parafuse me, but I rock smashed him down. He brought out Roselia next, and I psychicked it with Chimecho. Next is Delcatty, which I take down with Huntail. I take out Altaria after some annoying paralysis. His last Pokemon is Gardevoir, which is defeated by a few hits from Persian. Once I get to the Pokemon League, I need to train up, so I level everyone up to 55, and forgot about my 5 rare candies like always, and dispersed them across the party. I also decked them out with TM moves. I beat the first 2 Elite Four members without any deaths, but my laptop freaked out and I had to start over. So here we go for real. Sydney led with Mightyena, which I one-shot with Surf from Huntail. He then brings out Cacturne, and I switch to Mightyena. Goes down to a few strengths, and he brings out Shiftry, me switching to Persian. Swaggers, and I full heal and knock him out with Slash. He then brings in Crawdon, which I beat with a Thunderbolt. His last Pokemon is Absol, which I take down with 1 Slash. Second Elite Four member is Phoebe, and she leads with Dusclops while I lead with Mightyena. Crunch took it down to Red, but it confused Raid, so I switched into Persian. I Shadow Balled it and it confused Persian, so I switched back into Mightyena. It cursed itself to death, so I had to switch back into Persian for her Banette. It went down to 2 Shadow Balls, and she brought out Sableye next, so I brought back in Mightyena. It did some decent damage with Nightshade, and I took it out with Crunch. The next Banette went down to 1 Crunch, and her last Pokemon is another Dusclops. It has Earthquake, and I Hyper Potion just to be safe, but it went down to 2 Crunches. Third up is Glacia. She leads with Celio, and I with Persian. It goes down to 2 Thunderbolts. Her second Pokemon is Glalie, and I switch to Huntail. Glalie puts up Light Screen and Hyper Potions, but we get a crit and take it down from full health. She brings out another Celio, which is the same story as the first. Her fourth Pokemon is another Glalie. This one has Explosion, so I switched to Mightyena to Intimidate and Sand Attack it. It never went for Explosion, so I beat it with Crunch. Her last Pokemon is Walrein, which goes down to 3 Thunderbolts from Persian. The last member of the Elite Four is Drake, and he leads with Shelgon. I lead with Persian and Slash it a few times. Next out is Altaria, which I Ice Beam with Huntail. His third Pokemon is Kingdra, and I switched to Mightyena. Smoke screened a couple times, so I switched into Credilli. He full restored, so I predicted and went for Confuse Ray. He had a couple Dragon Dances up, so it did some decent damage when he hit himself. In combination with some Giga Drains, I knocked it out and he brought in Flygon, so I switched back to Huntail. It went down to 1 Ice Beam, and so did his last Pokemon, Salamence. Now it's time for the final battle with Wallace. He leads with Wailord, and I lead with Huntail. He set up Rain Dance, so Surf actually did more damage to it than Crunch. His second Pokemon is Ludicolo, and I switched to Mightyena. I swaggered, but he never hit himself. He double-teamed a bunch, and I kept missing, and he knocked out Mightyena with a crit Surf. I couldn't hit it with Chimecho either, who also got taken down by a crit Surf. I sent out Credilli and finally beat it with Giga Drain. Next he brought out Milotic, and I swapped back into Huntail. He kept using Toxic, and I would full restore up because
you don't get to be champion of the Pokemon League without knowing how to spam full restores!
After a long cycle of healing and crunching, I finally took it down. He next sent out Tentacruel, and I brought in Persian. I crit with Slash twice in a row. Next is Whiscash, and I switched Credilli back in. I max potioned him in Persian, and he got off 2 Amnesias, so it took 3 Giga Drains to beat him, and I only had 2, so I had to ether up during the fight. After defeating Whiscash, he sent out his final Pokemon, Gyarados, and I switched into Persian. I took him down to Red with Thunderbolt, but he blasted Persian with Hyper Beam, taking him down. I threw out Credilli, and using Gyarados' recharge turn, used Ancient Power, knocking him out, and defeating Champion Wallace. With that, we have won the challenge, beating Pokemon Emerald Trashlocke. Thank you all so much for watching. If you liked this video, check out my last Nuzlocke challenge I did of Pokemon Ash Gray. I also make Fallout New Vegas challenge videos if you're interested in that game too. Feel free to give any suggestions for ROM hacks for me to challenge next.